Everyone, we are recording this, and just a disclaimer, the information shared in here is simply my opinion and Judy's opinion. It's not legal or anything of that nature. It's simply stuff we've learned through our experience and endeavors with our clients and years of experience. So again, during this webinar, feel free to raise your hand if you've got a question, or I'll try and unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question. And depending on how time permits, we may have time at the end for a question and answer period too. So I would like to first welcome and thank Judy Fischer. Judy Fischer is with RJ Associates. She's an executive search person, and I will let Judy introduce herself.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate being here today. I am the J and my partner Ron is the R, and we have been in business since 1981, working with companies of all sizes and in all industries, helping them and financial people, very much heavily in the C-suite. And we're very proud of the work that we have done and the variety of companies we've worked with. And as well, we're very proud that we've never had to replace a candidate for non-performance. We think we do it right the first time.
So you got the recruiting and retaining thing down. You have the recruiting. You have the recruiting and retaining part down.
We certainly hope so after 40 plus years.
Okay. And hello, everyone. I am Jeff Johansson. I am with Iowa Insurance Services. My team's focus is in the property and casualty space and really helping companies protect their balance sheet from their liabilities. I believe that a company's greatest asset is also potentially its greatest liability, and those would be employees. It is my firm belief that employees can make or break a company and help clients get through the endeavor if they're hiring their next work comp plan. So Judy, if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump into it and ask you some questions with regards to this. And you know, we've heard a lot about the Great Resignation and stuff from COVID. It seems like a lot of attention has been put on COVID being the catalyst of this. Maybe it wasn't. What have you seen with your history in the workforce, and why we're here today?
But in history, and it actually relates to around the 1960s with birth control, believe it or not, where women were given choices, made choices of having fewer children or no children at all. And obviously moving forward, that greatly affected the number of people entering college, going into a particular field, and being available in a particular specialty. So it's a lot of factors. COVID probably was the tipping point for a lot of people. Nearly 1 million women left the workforce over the last couple of years. Some of it was because they couldn't find childcare. Some of it was they decided they weren't going to be doing the same job that they were doing. And some of it was simply they were being paid too little for too much. So there are a lot of factors that have affected this move.
It seems also one of the things that we've come into with this new COVID, what COVID's brought to us is the ability to be mobile in your work. And it seems like a lot of people are not sticking around. And what can we do as a company to minimize this?
Well, I wish there was some magic wand any company could wave to just keep their employees on site better and employed with them. But unfortunately, there's not. And yes, we are looking at a generation that is far more mobile in what they want to do and how they want to work. But there are things that can be done. One item is just more incentives. Make it more interesting. Everybody wants to be recognized. Every employee wants to feel like they're valued. So it could be incentives like just manageable, achievable, quantifiable goals for every employee. It could be a one-off, like, thanks for doing a great job this month. Let me take you to lunch. It could be things like best customer service awards. It could be any kind of bonus tied to even subjective things like having done a really well done job according to your peers. It could be that your attendance has improved. We're talking about various levels. Obviously, lower levels, attendance becomes more important. Senior levels, it's more about doing the job. One thing that has become more obvious is regular reviews. It used to be that people would get an annual review upon their anniversary date, but we have generations now that want to be reviewed and talked. They want to talk about their work much more regularly. So we're really recommending quarterly reviews at least. We have raised a culture here of everybody gets has been done to this generation, but it's the whole recognition factor, and that helps a great deal.
You know, I would think also a lot of these things don't necessarily need to cost a company a lot of money. Recognition is great, and quarterly reviews, although you do have the HR expense of the person doing them, it's not necessarily paying them more money to get them to hang around.
Right. And it can be gift cards, it can be concert tickets, it could be a half day off to do something that the employee wants, a day at the beach. That costs the company very little, and it's really appreciated.
All right. Can you explain, you know, we've got a lot of different generations in the workforce now, and kind of the different categories and what drives them, because what drives me may not drive a different generation.
You're so right. I have some notes here I'm going to just look at briefly because it's got age categories on it, and the age categories keep changing. So right now, the millennials are around 35 to 45. The Gen X's, those are the Gen X's. The Gen Z's are considered anywhere from about 23 and younger. And then baby boomers, about 46 to 60. Veterans, that doesn't mean military veterans, it just means veterans in the workplace, probably 60 and over. And the expectations for each of these groups varies dramatically. Starting with the millennials, that's changed. They looked more like younger generation at one point, but now that they've matured, they want more stability, and they want a regular operation. They came of age in an entirely different way. They are very computer and technology savvy. They want to be part of an organization that is up to date on all of that. They're far more open-minded. They look for more diversity in the workplace. They want to be in a company also that is community-minded, a company that has a mission beyond just selling whatever it sells. Baby boomers, those are that 46 to 60, they've matured into that has a stronger dedication to their work. That was never the case maybe 15, 20 years ago. And the older generation, they want to keep working, and they are dedicated to what they're doing. So if you recognize the differences in the age ranges, if you're hiring within those ranges, it helps a company understand where they need to pivot or where they need to emphasize.
Okay. So as an employer, what do I need to do, or how do I attract and keep good employees? What are the tools that you're seeing?
Okay, well, one of the major things is salaries, and we have seen a tremendous escalation in salaries over the last couple of years. Part of it is simply the competition for fewer workers in the workplace, and it's at every level. And I'm sure everyone has noticed it. If you go into a restaurant, prices have gone up because they're paying their help more. Food service of all kinds, hotels, you name it. Even buying, I just was in the store yesterday, and I bought a piece of meat, a hunk of beef that I need for a party. And it used to be about, $8, $10, $15 a pound. So everything is going up because salaries are pushing prices.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So how do you compete? Well, you need to evaluate your salary structure. And a lot of companies haven't done this in years, if ever. Are you competitive to your competitors? Are you offering the same salary structure? And sometimes it's really hard to know.
Do you
Yes.
have a resource where mid-sized companies can go to find kind of what others are paying?
If you just put in whatever the position is and the location in Los Angeles, for example, or general managers for aerospace companies in Los Angeles, salary structures will pop up on different sites. Glassdoor used to be pretty decent. It seems to be pretty out of touch now, quite honestly. And I also want to mention that there are other things besides salaries that have become part of packages. It could be, it used to be a car. Everybody wanted a car, but people don't want a car because that's become a taxable event. So let the company buy the car and they give it to the employee as a benefit. Bonuses are big. Bonuses are big because it talks about how you do your job and how the company values you. Longer weekends. We can talk about flexible hours. Those are all big incentives for helping companies keep their employees. It's still tough, and I have to tell you that we work heavily at the chief financial officer's level. 2, 3, 4 years ago, a chief financial officer for, let's say, a $200 million company would probably be in the 150 to 225 range. We're seeing salaries at the 300 to 350 to 400 range, plus a substantial bonus and equity. That is also an important piece.
Okay.
So everything has lifted.
Okay, we've got a question here. I'm going to just,
Great.
and I'm going to try and summarize it. It seems like, you give a lot to these employees, stuff that you've mentioned before. So what do you recommend when giving your employees many things? And it never seems to be enough. Is there, is there something you could recommend to this individual that it's never good? It's good for a brief time, but then it's something else they want or are unhappy with.
Well, more is never enough. And I think that's human nature. But if you have a structure in your company and everyone knows what that structure is, then everybody's playing on the same even terrain. There will always be people that want more, and there will always be people that will move to another job for another $1 an hour, and you can't do anything about that. But if you are a company that values your employees, and by the way, one recommendation is to develop work sessions where all of your employees come in, and even if they're in different departments, they can work in that department. And you work with them about issues and challenges and goals that you want to see happen for each employee in that segment or in the company in total. What you're really saying to that employee is, I value your opinion, I want your solutions, and you're an important and integral part to how we do our business. So sometimes it's non-quantifiable. Sometimes it's simply the way you behave and how you treat your employees. We can talk more about how you attract and keep. There are some good models out there. And do you want me to mention a couple, Jeff?
Yeah, please.
Okay. One is actually based on an experiment that was done a few years ago in Iceland. Now, Iceland is pretty homogeneous, but they have a pretty robust industrial base. And they decided to take a substantial number of companies and move the work week from 40 hours to 35 hours, but not to reduce salaries or benefits. And they did this experiment for about 3 to 4 years. And what they found was there was no reduction in productivity. Productivity was just as good as at 40 weeks, and employees loved the idea of having a few more hours in their week to themselves. I think we're also seeing that through the lens of COVID and how people are working at home. And it's not how many hours you're working, but how productive are you during those hours. So that is one thing that companies should probably take a look at. Not all companies can do that. For heaven's sakes, if you're an aerospace company working on the airplanes we fly on, please, 40 hours is fine with me. I want to make sure that plane is perfect. Other items could be adopting some kind of company-wide community-based project. It could be cleanup days. It could be planting days. It could be adopting a school. Anything where everybody does this together and there is a program in place that is really important to a younger generation now. They very much want to be civic-minded. They think bigger than themselves and bigger than their company, and they want to belong to an organization that's more than just work.
Judy, for those programs, it's I'm on the board for the Ronald McDonald House, and we're looking for people to help us and what have you. And in this conversation just now, I was thinking it's difficult because we're looking for help on the weekends or the evenings.
Yeah.
So I think maybe what I just thought of is maybe taking a block of work time off if you can as a company and coming doing a project together during regular working hours as opposed to off hours where people are trying to get home, take care of their families, or they got baseball games, soccer games, all these things. So maybe that's another thing where a company could
That's exactly, that comes under being more flexible in the workplace. Now, there is something else that we are seeing as a successful model, and that is developing internal mentoring. So it could be within a department, it could be peer-to-peer, but everybody has a mentor. Everybody becomes a mentee at some point or a mentor. And what this really does is it builds kind of a powerful, productive relationship between people and with the company. And it says, we want you to be successful, and here's how we're going to help you do it. Then, of course, all kinds of educational opportunities, whether you say to an employee, we'll pick up your college tuition if you go to this type of school. Obviously not Stanford or Harvard, but maybe if you want to pick up some more classes at the community college or one of the state schools. Now, there are companies that are doing things like this. They're bigger companies, I grant you, and it can be pricey. But some companies have said, we will pay for your college education, but you have to promise to give us 2 years after you graduate.
Okay.
So it brings somebody on board in a much more committed way.
And we had a question, and Mike Myers, if you don't mind taking yourself off mute and asking your question. I think you can do that. I may need to do that.
I think you have to do it, Jeff.
I have to do it. Bear with me, Mike.
Mike, I'm so glad you're here today.
There he is. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't get Mike. Bear with me.
Is it in the chat?
There we go. Okay, Mike, there you go, Mike. If you don't mute, you can go for it.
So you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So I was delighted to hear your employee engagement through community events. And part of my delight is because I support a couple of nonprofits locally. And, I'm looking to get participation from some of the aerospace and defense companies. And it occurred to me that if you invited the community and had this event supporting a charity, and then you kind of commingled the employees with potential new hires and you gave them neat stuff, swag and things like that. Have you ever seen that?
In a small way, yes. It happens to be an insurance company in the Woodland Hills area who does a community cleanup day. I think they do it twice a year. And they give everybody bags with water and probably some company literature in there, and a water bottle. I think there's a hat in there. So yes, they've done that, and they have invited the community to join them. But I think it's mostly their own employees, and they have been doing this on Saturday mornings when they've been doing it. So yes, I think anything you can give away where somebody has something to take home with your company's name on it is a great marketing piece.
And Mike, you may be able to do that in the recruiting process as sharing with the hiring or the applicants that you do these kinds of events in the community also.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
Judy, right now it's really hard to find employees or applicants and potential people to come and work with you. Do you have any out of the box kind of different ideas of where people could be looking for employees?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Jeff, honestly. There are 3 areas that we have been encouraging. One is the whole DEI initiative for diversity and equity and inclusion. And that includes people that maybe a company would not have typically looked at. We tend by human nature to hire in our own image. And it would be really important to a company, and for their workforce to look at people who typically have been excluded from the hiring process. And I'm not just referring to people of color or LGBTQ. I'm also referring to disabled, mentally challenged. It could be any level. If you have a place for it, and if you have an assembly line kind of process, it's quite possible that these people, a variety of people, could fit in. Another area that has been very successfully utilized is felons. Now, I know you're probably laughing at that. And if the position that I'm recruiting for is for a chief financial officer, it may be questionable that my client is going to look at a felon. But if you are in a business that requires on the line work, packaging, processing, any kind of thing that doesn't necessarily touch upon sensitive areas, there are a lot of people that are looking for that job and that opportunity back into the workforce to really make their life turned around. And then the third area is older workers. People are retiring much, much later. The whole nomenclature of Social Security at 65 or 67, that has long gone by the wayside. And even if people are collecting Social Security, they still want to work and they still want to be productive. And they've got years of fabulous experience that can be utilized. So I would encourage people to look at those 3 areas if it fits within what you need to do. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be doing exactly what you do, but if they can fit within your workforce.
Yeah, I believe that also there are some federal credits for employers that hire people on federal assistance programs, be it food stamps or that sort of stuff.
Correct.
So I think that another thing that companies need to look at when they're doing this is the hiring practice. The hiring practice needs to be really robust. You need to make sure you're getting the right people in. And I think screening needs to be a huge priority for companies.
Yes. Yes.
Job descriptions, background checks, and clear expectations from both the employee and the employer, I think, are vital. 50% of all workers' compensation claims come from employees that have been with a company for less than a year. And it's because of poor training generally, or they're just that type of people that feel entitled and that it's not such a bad thing to put in a work comp claim. And for every work comp claim, the carrier pays $1. The employer generally pays up to $6 in soft costs. So there's a huge incentive to make sure you're not just hiring a warm body, that you're getting the right people in. And
Yes.
because they can, the wrong people can really mess up the culture of a company. You know, all the way from your customers, the customer service, and the quality of your service, your product, whatever it is that you're making. It's just huge. A $30,000 claim paid by the carrier could incur about $180,000 to the employer, and just training, OSHA violations, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you're so right on, Jeff. There are the expectations in a job description are critical. There needs to be a methodology for interviewing and screening, whether it's internal or external, like a recruiter. The expectations once a person starts need to be laid out so that 6 months down the road, this individual doesn't discover they're supposed to be doing stuff that was never part of the job description. There are things that need to be very clearly stated. And what we recommend is from day one that person has a mentor.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference.
And
so you're so right.
Things will change during the progression of an employee's career. So it's not static. It's a living document.
Right. Yes. Well, it looks like we have a Q&A, somebody in Q&A.
Yeah, that was Mike.
Okay. And what about some people in the chat?
Chat, I didn't see any chat. If anyone would like to ask a question, they could go ahead and post it in the chat or post it in the Q&A. And I don't see anything.
In the interim, I would like to just mention that there are some items that are really critically important to that mid-level generation that everybody's looking for, that 25 to 45-year-old. And being part of a team that appreciates them, where the company is contributing to the community, where they feel that they have some growth, and where there's a work-life balance. I'm sure we've all heard that. And that they are part of a mission, not just part of a company.
Okay, we do have another question in the chat. What have you done to get creative recruiting through job fairs?
We don't go to job fairs. We don't do it that way. But I think companies certainly should investigate that if they feel that the job fair is addressing their particular expertise, because job fairs generally are specific to industries.
Yeah.
So that it's not worth going if it's not.
Yeah. If there are no more questions, I'd like to thank you very much, Judy, and for all of those that attended. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and share the recording of this. And also, I've got Judy's bio that I'll send out. And Judy, it's a pleasure. Great to see you as always. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for pulling it together. Totally a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.